The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council fell silent. Thousands of alien representatives sat in their floating pods, their eyes fixed on the massive hologram displaying their dying empire. Red dots marked the systems already lost to the Void Swarm. There were too many red dots. High Counselor Marcus, a tall being with silver skin and deep purple eyes, gripped the edges of his podium. His voice echoed through the chamber. Another 3 systems fell yesterday. The Void Swarm grows stronger with each world they consume. Our best weapons barely scratch their ships anymore. The room erupted in worried whispers. A small green-skinned delegate stood up. What about the shield technology from the Bright Minds? They said it would stop the swarm. Marcus shook his head slowly. The shields failed. The swarm adapted, just like they always do. They learn, they evolve, and they keep coming. He pressed a button, and a hologram changed to show a small blue planet. But there might be one last hope. The whispers turned to gasps. Many delegates stood up, pointing at the image. Earth, you can't be serious. Someone shouted. They're savages. Savages who might be our only chance, Marcus replied. He pulled up another image, showing primitive human weapons and wars. 10,000 years ago, we quarantined Earth because they were too violent, too unpredictable. While we built our empire on logic and order, they embraced chaos. They fought wars with no rules, created weapons that made no sense. An old delegate with tentacles waving in frustration spoke up. That's exactly why we locked them away. They're dangerous. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. Yes, they are dangerous. And that's exactly what we need right now. He showed videos of human battles, their strange tactics, their willingness to fight even when outnumbered. The Void Swarm beats us because they can predict everything we do. We're too logical, too ordered. But humans? They're different. The council chamber grew quiet again as they watched humans fight. They saw soldiers hiding in trees, using the environment in ways no logical species would think of. They saw ships using waves to hide from enemies, fighters diving straight at the ground before pulling up at the last second. Our quarantine worked too well, Marcus continued. While we advanced with clean fusion and quantum drives, they still use explosion-powered rockets and projectile weapons. Their technology is so primitive that it might actually work against the swarm. The Void won't know how to handle it. A blue-skinned delegate raised her hand. But how do we know they'll help us? We locked them away on their planet. Marcus nodded to a door at the side of the chamber. It opened, and Ambassador Reed walked in. He was a tall human with gray hair and a simple black uniform. The aliens whispered in surprise. None of them had seen a real human before. My friends, Reed spoke calmly, looking around the room. For 10,000 years, we wondered if we were alone in the universe. We built telescopes, sent signals to space, and dreamed of meeting other life. He paused, his eyes scanning the worried faces. We didn't know you were all out here, watching us, keeping us isolated. We should be angry about that. The chamber grew tense. Reed smiled. But right now, you need help. And if there's one thing humans are good at, it's helping others in trouble, even those who might not deserve it. Marcus stepped forward. Then you'll fight with us. Reed's smile faded into a serious expression. No, High Counselor. We won't just fight with you. We'll show you how to win. Humanity has never backed down from a battle, and we're not about to start now. The Void Swarm thinks they're unstoppable because they can predict everything. Well, they've never met humans before. We're going to show them what real chaos looks like. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Hope began to replace fear in their voices. They had just invited the most dangerous species in the galaxy to join their war. And for the first time since the Void Swarm appeared, they had a chance to win. The United Nations chamber in New York buzzed with energy as world leaders watched the massive alien ships descend through Earth's atmosphere. Golden shields flickered around the vessels as they settled above the city, their smooth surfaces reflecting the morning sun. Ambassador Reed stood at the podium, his black uniform now decorated with both Earth and Galactic Council symbols. "For centuries, we thought we were alone," he said, his voice firm. "Now we know the truth. We were kept in a cage, but that cage might have made us stronger than anyone out there." Screens around the chamber showed videos of the Void Swarm destroying entire worlds. The room fell silent as they watched planets turn dark, their surfaces covered by the living metal of the enemy. A general from India stood up, his face stern. "How many worlds have they taken?" 312, Reed replied. "Their ships are alive. They learn from every battle, and they've beaten every weapon the Council has created." He paused, looking around the room, but they've never faced humans before. In orbit above Earth, Captain James walked through his ship, the Prometheus. Once an aircraft carrier sailing the Pacific, it now floated in space. Engineers had worked day and night, combining human innovation with alien technology. The ship still had its old missile launchers and fighter bays, but now they sat next to quantum cannons and shield generators. "Status report," James called out as he reached the bridge. His crew worked at stations that mixed familiar buttons and levers with holographic displays. "All systems ready, sir," his first officer replied. "The aliens think we're crazy for keeping the old weapons, but they work. Their fancy shields don't stop simple bullets and missiles. They're too focused on blocking energy weapons." James smiled, watching through the window as more ships joined them in orbit. Each vessel was different. Converted cargo ships, cruise liners, even fishing boats, all turned into warships. No two were the same, making them impossible to predict. Down on Earth, in a hidden base under the Rocky Mountains, Engineer Lisa worked on their secret weapon. She held up a small metal ball, showing it to the mixed team of human and alien scientists. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one," she said. The aliens looked confused as she explained. "Your quantum torpedoes are amazing, but they're too perfect. The Void Swarm knows exactly how they work. But this," she pointed to the ball, "this is packed with old-fashioned explosives, ball bearings, and just a touch of alien tech. It's messy, chaotic, and beautiful." One of the alien scientists, a tall being with crystal skin, picked up the ball carefully. "It makes no logical sense," he said. "The design is random, almost primitive." He paused, his crystal face lighting up with understanding. "That's exactly why it might work." In the following weeks, Earth changed faster than ever before. Streets filled with alien visitors sharing technology, while human soldiers taught aliens about guerrilla warfare and unconventional tactics. Fighter pilots showed them how to use the environment, to hide in asteroid fields, to turn weakness into strength. Captain James stood on the Prometheus's bridge one last time before they left Earth. His crew was ready. Their ships were armed with weapons that made no sense to the rest of the galaxy, and humanity was finally united with one purpose. "All ships, report in," he called over the radio. One by one, the strangest fleet the galaxy had ever seen checked in. Fishing boats turned battleships, cruise liners carrying fighters, cargo ships hiding secret weapons. "Remember," James said to his crew, "they think they know everything about war. They've never seen how humans fight. We don't follow their rules. We don't think like them." He smiled as the fleet prepared to jump into space. "Let's show the galaxy why they kept us locked away for so long." The fleet of Earth, 5,000 ships of all shapes and sizes, vanished into the stars. The Void Swarm was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous weapon is the one that makes no sense at all. The edge of the Orion system was quiet when the human fleet arrived. Captain James stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the gas giant's rings through the main window. The planet's blue surface swirled with storms bigger than Earth. "Contact," his radar officer shouted. Multiple Void Swarm ships entering the system. The enemy ships looked like black crystals, their surfaces moving like liquid metal. There were hundreds of them, each one bigger than the biggest human ships. They moved in perfect formation, exactly as the Council's reports had described. James smiled. Perfect formation. Perfect order. That's their weakness. He pressed the ship-wide comm button. All ships, remember your training. Chaos Protocol starts now. The human fleet scattered. Instead of forming neat battle lines like the aliens expected, every ship went in a different direction. Cargo ships flew straight at the enemy. Passenger liners dove into the gas giant storms. Fishing boats turned warships hid in the planet's rings. The Void Swarm hesitated. Their perfect formation broke slightly as they tried to track the scattered human ships. This had never happened before. Every species they had fought used proper military formations. They're confused, James said. Now, from the gas giant's storms, converted cruise ships launched old-fashioned nuclear missiles. From the rings, fishing boats fired railguns loaded with simple metal balls. The Prometheus released its fighters, which flew in zigzag patterns that made no sense. The Void Swarm's shields, designed to stop advanced energy weapons, couldn't handle the primitive attacks. Nuclear explosions cracked their crystal ships. Metal balls from railguns punched holes in their perfect surfaces. Human fighters flew attack patterns that belonged in the ocean, not space. "Sir," the radar officer called out. "They're ships. They're trying to adapt, but they can't predict what we'll do next." James nodded. "Because we don't know what we'll do next either. Launch the secret weapon." Engineer Lisa's special bombs launched from ships hidden in the rings. The small metal balls looked harmless, but inside each one was a mix of old explosives and new alien tech. When they hit the Void Swarm ships, they didn't explode like normal weapons. Instead, they created chaos inside the enemy vessels. The living metal of the Void Swarm tried to adapt, but it couldn't. The weapons were too random, too unpredictable. Some exploded like normal bombs. Others released clouds of metal dust that jammed their systems. A few created weird energy fields that made the living metal forget how to hold its shape. "It's working," someone shouted. On the main screen, they watched Void Swarm ships break apart. The perfect crystal formations turned into twisted metal. Ships that could heal from energy weapons couldn't handle simple explosions and metal balls. The swarm tried to retreat, but human ships were hiding everywhere. Fighter pilots flew through gaps in the gas giant's rings, using the ice and rocks as cover. Old cargo ships appeared from behind moons, firing missiles. Every time the swarm thought they knew where the humans were, they attacked empty space instead. After an hour of battle, it was over. The mighty Void Swarm, which had never lost a battle, retreated in confusion. They left behind dozens of destroyed ships, their perfect crystal surfaces shattered by humanity's primitive weapons. On the Prometheus's bridge, Captain James looked at the battlefield. Broken crystal ships floated next to chunks of ice from the rings. His fleet had taken losses too, but they had won. They had actually won. "Send word to Earth and the Council," he ordered. "Tell them we found the swarm's weakness. They expect everything to make sense. They expect proper battles with proper rules." He smiled as his crew cheered. "But humans don't play by the rules. We never have, and we never will." As the fleet regrouped, news of their victory spread across the galaxy. For the first time, the Void Swarm had been defeated, and they had lost to weapons that the rest of the galaxy had abandoned thousands of years ago. The Council had been right to fear humans, but now, that same fear would save them all. Engineer Lisa stood in front of a classroom filled with alien students at the newly built Earth Defense Academy. Behind her, a hologram showed the remains of a Void Swarm ship, its perfect crystal surface cracked by simple human weapons. "The biggest mistake in warfare," she said, picking up a regular hammer, "is thinking that newer always means better." She tapped the hammer against the desk. "Sometimes the old ways work best." In the back of the room, Council scientists watched with a mixture of confusion and interest. They had spent thousands of years making weapons more complex, more advanced. Now they were learning about hammers and explosives. One of the alien students raised a hand, their crystal skin glowing with curiosity. But our quantum cannons are more powerful than your missiles. Why do your weapons work better? Lisa smiled. Because the swarm knows exactly what your quantum cannons will do. But this, she held up one of her special bombs. This might explode, or release metal dust, or create a weird energy field. Even we don't know what it'll do until we use it. That's why it works. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt of a distant system, Captain James led a training mission. Council ships followed his converted carrier, the Prometheus, as he showed them how to fight in the chaos of the rocks. "Your ships are faster than ours," he said over the radio. "Your sensors are better. But you fly like machines, always taking the most efficient path." He steered the Prometheus into a dense cluster of asteroids. Sometimes the crazy path is the path to victory. The alien ships watched in amazement as human pilots turned the asteroid field into a weapon. They hid behind rocks, used the dust clouds as cover, and flew patterns that no computer would ever suggest. Back on Earth, in the underground base beneath the Rocky Mountains, humans and aliens worked together on new weapons. But instead of making them more advanced, they made them stranger. "Look at this," a human weapons designer said, showing his alien colleagues a new missile. "It doesn't just explode. First, it splits into smaller pieces. Some pieces make noise to confuse their sensors. Others release smoke. A few actually explode. And some do nothing at all." The alien scientists looked puzzled. "But how do you know which ones will do what?" "We don't." The designer grinned. "That's the point. The Void Swarm can't predict what they can't understand." Across the galaxy, more species began studying human warfare. They learned about guerrilla tactics, about using the environment as a weapon, about the power of uncertainty. Council ships started carrying human weapons alongside their energy cannons. In orbit around a distant moon, a Council fleet faced a Void Swarm attack. But this time, they didn't fight in perfect formations. Their ships scattered like humans had taught them. They fired weird weapons that didn't make sense. They turned their surroundings into weapons. The swarm, expecting the usual ordered battle, fell into confusion. Their perfect formations broke apart as they tried to predict what their enemies would do next. But there was nothing to predict, only chaos. After the battle, the Council fleet's admiral, a tall being with wings of light, sent a message to Earth. "We understand now. We were so focused on advancing forward that we forgot to look in other directions. You taught us that sometimes a step sideways is better than a step forward." In her classroom, Lisa watched her alien students practice with simple tools and weapons. They were learning to think differently, to embrace chaos, to be unpredictable. "The Void Swarm thinks they can beat us because they can learn and adapt," she told them. "But they can only adapt to things that make sense. And humans." She picked up another of her special bombs, its surface covered in random patterns. "We specialize in things that don't make sense." The galaxy was changing. The ordered, logical civilization that had existed for thousands of years was learning to embrace chaos. And in their darkest hour, they had found hope in the most unexpected place. The primitive, unpredictable humans they had once feared. The war room deep under the Rocky Mountains was silent as Captain James played the latest battle recordings. The holograms showed something new. Void Swarm ships moving in random patterns, trying to copy human tactics. "They're learning," James said, pointing to the screen. "Not just adapting their ships anymore. They're actually trying to fight like us." Engineer Lisa stood up from her chair, walking through the hologram. "Of course they are. That's what they do. They learn, they copy, they improve." She smiled. "But that's exactly what we wanted them to do." The alien representatives in the room looked confused. A tall being made of blue crystal spoke up. "You wanted them to become more dangerous." "We wanted them to stop being perfect," Lisa replied. She pressed a button, showing more battle footage. "Look at their ships now. They're not in perfect formation anymore. They're trying to be chaotic, trying to be unpredictable." She laughed. "But they're trying to be chaotic in a logical way." James nodded, understanding. They're following patterns to look random. But real chaos doesn't follow patterns. In space, above a distant mining colony, a small fleet of human ships waited. They weren't military vessels. They were cargo ships, passenger liners, and mining boats. Each one looked normal, harmless. But inside, they were filled with weapons. Project Wildcard is ready, the fleet commander radioed to Earth. Just like the captain said, when they try to copy our chaos, we give them order instead. The Void Swarm arrived exactly as predicted. Their ships moved in random patterns, copying human tactics. But something was wrong. They couldn't find the human fleet they had detected. All they saw were normal civilian ships going about their business. Now, the commander ordered. The civilian ships suddenly change. Cargo bay doors opened to reveal missile launchers. Passenger windows became gun ports. Mining lasers turned into weapons. The normal-looking ships transformed into a perfect military formation, something the swarm hadn't seen in months. The enemy, trying to fight chaos with chaos, didn't know how to react. They had changed their whole way of fighting to deal with human unpredictability. Now, faced with an ordinary ordered attack, they fell into confusion. Back on Earth, Lisa worked with her team on their next surprise. The swarm thinks they know us now, she told her alien colleagues. They think human chaos is just random attacks and weird weapons. She held up what looked like a normal spaceship engine. So let's show them what happens when humans decide to be logical instead. The engine was a copy of an old council design, but with a twist. Instead of trying to make it more powerful or more efficient, they had made it completely normal. It worked exactly as expected, followed all the rules of physics perfectly. The swarm will scan this engine and think they know exactly what it does, Lisa explained. They won't look deeper because it's too simple, too normal. She pointed to a hidden compartment inside. That's where we put the real surprise. Across the galaxy, human fleets began changing their tactics. Sometimes they fought with pure chaos, weapons and ships that made no sense. Other times they used perfect military formations and standard weapons. The swarm never knew what to expect. That's the real secret of humanity, James told the council representatives. Everyone thinks we're just chaos and confusion, but we can be ordered when we need to be. We can be logical when we want to be. He showed them the battle plans for their next attack. The art of war isn't about being unpredictable all the time. It's about being unpredictable about when you'll be unpredictable. The Void Swarm had learned to copy human chaos, but they had fallen into humanity's trap. Because the only thing more confusing than chaos is knowing that chaos might suddenly turn into perfect order at any moment. The turning point of the war hadn't come from a new weapon or a brilliant strategy. It had come from teaching the enemy to fear both order and chaos, never knowing which one they would face next. The largest meeting room in the Galactic Council was packed. Representatives from every surviving species watched as Captain James walked to the center platform. Behind him, Engineer Lisa carried a small black box. "We found it," James announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We found their home system." The room erupted in whispers. For thousands of years, no one had known where the Void Swarm came from. They appeared from deep space, consumed worlds, and vanished again. "That's impossible," a council member said. "Our best scouts searched for centuries." Lisa stepped forward, opening the black box. Inside was a piece of broken crystal from a Void Swarm ship. "They found it impossible because they were looking with logic," she said. "We found it by accident." She explained how a human cargo ship had gotten lost in deep space. Its old navigation system had malfunctioned, sending it far off course. There, in the darkness between galaxies, they had seen something impossible. A massive cloud of living metal, spreading across the stars. "Their home," James said, "not a planet or a system, but a vast cloud of the same living metal their ships are made from. And we're going to destroy it." The council chamber fell silent. An alien made of pure light floated forward. Even if you found their home, it's suicide to attack it. Our greatest fleets couldn't reach that far into space. James smiled. That's why we're not going to use your greatest fleets. He pressed a button, showing images of thousands of small ships. We're going to use our worst ships instead. The plan was pure human thinking. Instead of powerful warships, they would use simple cargo vessels. Instead of quantum drives, they would use basic engines. Every ship would be different, each one carrying a piece of Lisa's latest invention. The Void Swarm's strength is their connection. Lisa explained. Every ship is linked to their home cloud, sharing information, learning, adapting. But what happens if we turn that connection against them? She showed them her new weapon. It looked like junk, pieces of old computers mixed with alien tech, held together with duct tape and hope. This device doesn't try to break their connection. It makes the connection too perfect. The alien scientists in the room began to understand. One of them, his crystal skin glowing with excitement, spoke up. You're going to overload their network. Give them too much information at once. Exactly, James said. Each ship will broadcast different signals. Some will be normal data. Some will be nonsense. Some will be silence. Their network will try to process everything at once, trying to find patterns in chaos. The council members watched as he showed the battle plan. Thousands of small ships would jump into the space around the Void Swarm's home. Each one would act differently, send different signals, follow different patterns. The living metal would try to understand it all at once. They've adapted to copy our chaos, Lisa said. Now every part of their network will try to adapt differently. They'll tear themselves apart trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. Some council members still doubted. This plan is crazy, one said. It breaks every rule of warfare. Exactly, James replied. That's why it will work. And that's why we need volunteers from every species. He looked around the room. The Void Swarm knows how humans think now. But they don't know how humans think when we work together with logical aliens. One by one, representatives stood up. Species that had fought each other for millennia now volunteered to join the human fleet. They would bring their own chaos to the mix, making the attack even more unpredictable. Lisa held up her strange device one more time. They think they've learned to handle human chaos, but they've never seen what happens when the whole galaxy decides to be human for a day. The final battle was about to begin. And this time, it wasn't just humanity bringing the chaos. It was every species in the galaxy, each one adding their own flavor of confusion to the mix. The space between galaxies was no longer empty. Thousands of ships filled the darkness. Cargo vessels, passenger ships, mining boats, and old warships from every species in the galaxy. At their center, the Prometheus led the strangest fleet ever assembled. Captain James stood on his bridge, watching the massive cloud of living metal that was the Void Swarm's home. It stretched across space like a silver web, pulsing with dark energy. All ships report ready, his communications officer said. Everyone has Lisa's device installed. Engineer Lisa's voice came over the radio from her position in the fleet. Remember, timing doesn't matter. In fact, the more random our attacks, the better. Just make sure your devices are running when you get close enough. The Void Swarm noticed them. Countless crystal ships emerged from the living metal cloud, forming their usual perfect formations. But these formations kept shifting, trying to be unpredictable like they had learned from humans. They're still trying to copy us, James said, smiling. Perfect. All ships, attack in your own way. Show them what real chaos looks like. The fleet broke apart. Each species fought in their own style. Human ships flew wild patterns. Crystal beings created confusing light shows. Energy creatures pulsed with random frequencies. Every ship broadcast different signals from Lisa's devices. The Void Swarm's network tried to process everything at once. Their living metal twisted as it received thousands of different patterns, each one demanding to be understood. Crystal ships began to move in different directions, some following old patterns, others trying new ones. "It's working," Lisa shouted over the radio. "Their network can't handle so many different types of chaos at once. Each part is trying to adapt differently." The massive cloud of living metal began to ripple. Parts of it turned solid, trying to be ordered and logical. Other parts became fluid, attempting to copy the chaos. The different reactions fought against each other, tearing the cloud apart. James watched as the mighty void swarm, which had terrorized the galaxy for so long, began to destroy itself. All ships, full power to the devices. Let's give them more patterns to process. Every ship activated Lisa's invention at full strength. The devices sent waves of information, some logical, some random, some completely meaningless. The Void Swarm's network, trying to understand and adapt to everything at once, finally broke. The living metal cloud shattered. Crystal ships fell apart as their connection to the network overloaded. The perfect patterns that had made the swarm so powerful became their weakness, trying to be both ordered and chaotic at the same time. Hours later, it was over. Where the mighty void swarm had once lived, only scattered pieces of metal remained. The combined fleet of the galaxy hung in space, hardly believing their victory. In the council chamber a week later, Captain James and Engineer Lisa stood before representatives of every species. The High Counselor, his silver skin shining, stepped forward. "For 10,000 years, we kept humanity locked away because we feared their chaos," he said. "Today, that same chaos has saved us all." He turned to the chamber. "The quarantine of Earth is officially ended. Humanity is now part of the galactic community." But humanity had changed the galaxy in more ways than one. Across the stars, species that once relied only on logic began studying human warfare. The Earth Defense Academy became the galaxy's greatest military school, teaching both chaos and order. The true lesson, Lisa told her alien students years later, wasn't that chaos beats order. It was that you need both. Sometimes you need perfect logic. Sometimes you need pure chaos. The real power is in knowing when to use each one. Captain James, now Admiral James, often looked at the stars from his office on Earth. The galaxy was different now. Ships of all species flew together, sharing both human chaos and alien logic. New weapons combined simple human ideas with advanced alien technology. "They feared us because we were unpredictable," he told young cadets at the academy. But being unpredictable didn't mean being uncontrolled. It meant being free to try new things, to think differently, to find solutions no one else could see. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The next time darkness threatened the stars, they wouldn't lock away those who thought differently. They would celebrate them instead, knowing that in the darkest times, sometimes the strangest solution is the best one. And somewhere in deep space, the remaining pieces of the void swarm drifted harmlessly through the void, a reminder that even the mightiest enemy can fall to the simple chaos of human thinking.